everyone. Welcome to some mobility work today. So really today we're just going to focus in on mobility, and mobility we think about as like mobility in our joints. That's usually where we think about mobility. So how much will our joints allow us to move in one direction or another, So we're going to work through trying to get some mobility into our joints. It's different than flexibility. Flexibility is thinking about elongating the muscles in these between joints, and we're thinking about our joints in particular right now. So we're going to start with our feet. So we're kind of going ground up, working our way all the way up to the top. So how we're going to start is just find a comfortable spot to sit down, and then grab one of your feet, and you're going to pull the toes of your feet towards you, and then you can either keep that same hand and push those toes away, or you can pull them towards you and then grab with your other hand and push them away. And so we're going to start with pull, and then grab, push, pull, push. We're thinking about really pulling and crinkling those toes in, and then really elongating and pressing them out. So thinking about mobility through our feet. We use our feet all day long, every day. Primary movement here. Make sure that you're doing all of the toes, including the big toe. Push all the way out to that pinky toe. Pull it back in. Pushing them out. Pulling it back in. We want to get into a nice range here, really causing some good mobility through our feet. The more mobile we become, the better it is for our body to be able to move, literally mobility. Switch to your other foot. So if we start down at our toes and we work our way up, pushing and pulling and getting more mobility in through our feet first, then through the ankles, knees, hips. We're going to increase our ability to move and move well and move properly, especially when we're working out. It allows us to get into those deep squats, to have the flexion in our bodies to be able to withstand pivoting and turning, especially when we think about the toes. Small movements that we do start in our feet and work their way up. It's really just pull and push, pull and push. Really getting into this nice range again on the other side, working through all the toes. And then what we do to really increase mobility is we're going to, after we do these kind of fascial warm-ups, is kind of what we're doing here, where fascia is kind of like, think about it like saran wrap that surrounds your body. We're warming up the fascia to be able to hold each position for 2 minutes. So the thing that we're going to hold for 2 minutes is a toe position. So we're going to get all the way up on your toes, and you're going to hold. You can either stay in a balanced position here, where you're balanced out on your toes and you're finding that deep flexion, or you can maneuver so that your knees are on the ground, but you're really trying to push into all of your toes. I find that one really stretches a little bit more than the other, so find the one that gives you a bit more flexion in that toe and settle yourself in. And we're going to hold here for 2 minutes. So I do like starting in the balanced position. This is just kind of a preference for me. When I start in the balance, it allows me to move the weight along all of my toes as opposed to keeping it just on the ball of my foot. I find that once I put my knees to the ground, I have a harder time keeping that equal pressure throughout the entire foot. You can work your way through whatever range you would like. It means that the feet go down to the ground. You Stay pushing into those toes. Stay pushing in, really getting some deep mobility here. You can always play with how your weight is. Kind of shift the weight side to side, giving a little bit more pressure on each foot. The more and the longer that you can begin to hold these poses, we're starting off with 2 minutes on each of them, but the greater length of time you can give yourself holding in these mobility poses, the greater range that you begin to develop. Now, don't get crazy and be like, oh, I'm going to hold this for 10 minutes. You know, slowly, incrementally add a few seconds at a time as you're holding these deep mobility ranges. And 2, 1. You can just kind of kick your toes out behind you and just lay them flat and have a seat. You can always straighten your legs all the way out and just kind of feel that rebounding effect or that resilient blood flowing into that joint area, kind of giving you that rebound, that nice bit of relaxation through the toes. And just kind of circle around for a second. Wiggle the toes. And now we're going to go into some ankle mobility. So it's pretty similar to what we were doing a second ago. We're going to grab our ankle this time, though. We're going to push it away, and then we're going to turn our pinky toe towards our face and rotate it so that your foot is kind of rotating in and up, and then back out, in and up. So I'm this way, and then I'm rotating in and up. Push it away, and then rotate in and up. Push away, rotate in and up. I have the palm of my hand against my pinky toe, and I'm pushing with the palm away, and then I'm grabbing with my fingers and rotating up towards my face. And I have my other hand kind of creating a little base here. And I'm working on this ankle range. This is typically when our ankles roll, they'll roll inward, and we're just kind of working on that inward roll. We want to create the mobility in that ankle to be able to withstand a roll and not tear through our ligaments, our tendons, or break our ankle. So we're working on mobility in our ankle for this. And it's a push, pull, push, pull. If you have to wear heels a lot for work, this is a great one to do every day, just to kind of give your ankles that little bit of extra rotation because they're kept in such a steep angle. It's a nice ankle strengthener. If you've recently strained or sprained your ankle, take really good care to just push and then gently come back till you find just a little bit of resistance. Switch to your other side, pushing away, pulling and rotating, pushing away, pulling and rotating. Really try and find the nice range that you can. And we're just thinking about warming up that fascial layer that will then be statically holding here in a second. Get one more push away and pull it back. Okay, so now we are going to stand up and we're going to roll onto the outside of our feet here. So our pinky toes are all along the ground, our inner foot is up, and we're just trying to find equal pressure throughout that foot here. And we're going to hold for a couple of minutes here. So we're going. When you think about the equal pressure in your feet, do that kind of transfer of weight from your heels forward onto that pinky toe, and then find where you have sort of equal pressure from that pinky toe through the heel. You don't want to have all your weight in your pinky toe. You don't want to have all the weight in the heel of your foot. You really just want to kind of think about equal pressure all along that side. As I stand here and what's sort of uncomfortable for me, I start making note about the things that are uncomfortable. So on my right side, on the outside of my leg, I'm kind of getting like a little twinge, or what I can tell is a tight spot or something, like a pinpoint something. So that gives me a mental note that, okay, tomorrow when I do trigger point work, which is knot, that's a knot that I need to try and work through. So when we work through mobility, it kind of gives us a segue into our trigger point work and be like, okay, so I've got some mobility work here. I was holding this mobile pose, but man, am I feeling some tension, and it's kind of right about right here. So I'm going to keep a nice good mental note of that. So tomorrow when I go to trigger point therapy and I'm putting a ball or a foam roller, whatever it is, into that spot, I'm going to spend a little more time there, and I'm going to be pretty precise with getting into that one particular spot because I can feel it in my mobility work. We've got a few more seconds here on the ankles. And remember that every side of your body is different. Try and relax through the other parts of your body. Try not to squeeze your cheeks or squeeze your quads. You're just kind of allowing your body weight to be into an uncomfortable position on your ankle to try and work through that mobility. And 2, 1, go ahead and straighten your feet out. And now just stand. Now just flat feet on the ground, just standing, kind of feeling that outer edge. See if you feel anything along your sides, and then now rock from toe to heel, toe to heel. Just working your way through. Let's get one more toe to heel. And then we're gonna have a seat. Okay, so in the seat that we're gonna go into, let me spin my mat really quick. We're gonna sit offset. So I have my left foot bent in and it's resting on my right thigh. My right thigh is out to my side and my right foot is kind of back behind me. We're going to warm up our knees here. We're thinking about warming up through the knees because that's the next joint that we're going into. And we're going to kind of just lean forward and come up onto our knees. So we're going to lean forward, press those hips up, and then we're going to sit right back down. Lean forward, squeeze, tuck, press the hips up, sit right back down. If coming straight up is too much, you can always walk your hands out, walk your hands forward, and then walk your hands back for that seat. Walking up and back. So keep going here, just doing this nice rotation. It is also warming up our hips. So we're doing a couple of warm-ups here. One, we're primarily thinking about our knees in this warm-up, but our hips are also getting nice and warm in this. Just going up and down. And I get popping in my hips on this. It's pretty common. Bit of tension, tightness in through those tendons in there. Let's get one more. Up, down, and then flip your legs. Right leg comes into left thigh, left foot behind you, and then back up and down. Remember that every side of your body is different. This side, you might have been able to just get up and down quite easily. On the other side, you might have needed to walk those hands up. It's okay. It's just different sides, worked and overworked in different ways. Really thinking about our knees getting nice and warm as we get into this. As we drive up, we engage those quads, glutes squeeze, working all the accessory muscles around the leg. Come back up to center. Staying on your knees, you can stay wide here, or you can begin to bring your feet close together, whatever works for you. but we're gonna sit down. And now my butt doesn't, actually it does. Usually it doesn't make it all the way to the ground in this. I have to kind of hover. And if you need to hover, hover. If you need to put your hands at your sides, pillows, blocks, whatever you need to be able to get deep into this, get as deep as you can go, as deep as your knees will allow. And we're just gonna hold here for 2 minutes. So here we go. Having a nice seat. Now we had kind of warmed up through the hips too, so we're feeling the hips, but we're really feeling our knees being nice and locked in. I usually start wide, and as wide as I can get, and then just kind of sit with it. I really focus on my breathing. And as this becomes uncomfortable, I try and really focus on being very present and aware that this is uncomfortable, it's slightly painful, and I'm not really happy with this, but I know that it's good and that it only is going to last for a little bit. So this really helps with my meditation or my mindset. You can walk your hands backwards. That's another place to be. Kind of walk backwards and lean back with this. But wherever you are, just try and be still. Really focus on your breathing. You're almost there. 2 and 1. I find the best way to come out of this is to lean my body weight forward, walk my hands up, and then roll onto my side and have a seat. I want to straighten my legs out. And as I'm allowing my legs to be nice and straight out, I again want to be mindful of any feeling of tension or tightness that I had while holding that knee bent position, but also as I released it. And again, I had another twinge spot back behind my knee here. So that's another mental note of a place that I would want to go back in and do some trigger point work, because that's a spot of tension for me. So I'm just going to pedal the legs out for a second or two, kind of let that feeling come back in through my lower half of my legs and feel how my knees feel themselves. How does the area surrounding my knees feel? A lot of times initially it feels pretty like, oh man, that was not good. Eventually it does get to feel a little bit better. Coming back up into that cross position where I've got one knee bent back behind me, the other foot comes in. This time we're going to really start warming up through our hips. Think about kind of sliding your hand from one side to the other. So I'm really just trying to touch. I'm thinking about the hip not lifting up as I reach out to one side, and then as I reach to the other side, not allowing that hip to come up. Try to keep your chest sort of even, and we're just going to go out side to side. Here we go. And I like doing 8, 7, 6, 2, and 1, and then switch the legs. Setting everything up, shoulders back, chest up, out to one side. 8 and 7. Remember that every part of your body might feel a little different. So this side might feel better, it might have a greater range, might not. Nice. Come back up to center. We're going to go on to both knees. We're just going to open here for a second, taking your legs out to your feet out to your sides and then bringing them back in. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice. Come back up to center. Okay, we're going to hold a very deep squat here. So a couple of things that we want to think about in our deep squat. One is that your toes need to stay pointing towards the front. I have a bad tendency of getting into a deep squat, and you can see that my toes are pointed out to the side. We don't want that to happen, so you want to take that deep squat, but you want to keep your feet pointed forward. So you're going to get as deep into this squat as you can, keeping those feet pointed forward. I find that I need to take a wider stance to start to be able to keep my toes pointed towards, forward direction. So find what's going to work for you, and we're going to squat down and stay nice and deep here. So then I can play with this. If I started wide, I can start to walk my feet in a little closer. But really thinking about my hips sinking down nice and low. Someone today asked, are we trying to push our knees out with our elbows? And you're really not. You're just kind of sitting down. My arms just happen to fit in that position. So just let your hands be where they are going to be and sink deeply into this. As a Western society, we don't really sit in these deep-seated positions anymore, and we've lost the ability to have our hips be as open to being able to handle this low, deep squat. So try and work through that mobility. If you needed to have a table or something there with you, go right ahead. Remember that feet are flat, toes are pointed towards the front. Nice deep squat here. Really working through the hips. Passively, the knees are getting a little bit out of it. It might be more active than passive, but they're getting some work too. You're almost there. And 2, 1, stand up. Nice straight legs. And just feel that rebound. I like pushing my hips side to side. Whatever works for you, you can do circles. Just take a second and really feel how those hips were able to expand just in those couple of minutes. Just the ability to open them up, relax some of that inner hip joint out a little bit. Our next one that we're going to do, we're going to have a seat. We're going back down to the ground. Spend a lot of time on the ground. The next one that we're going to do is we're going to do some spinal twists. So we're going to start working through our lower back spinal twists. And what we do is we have our feet straight out in front of us. And we're just going to turn and twist one side and then gently to the other. And we're just going for 8 to each side. So here we go. 2, 1, turn and twist. 8, 8, 7, 5, 3. Last one to each side. Left and right. Nice. Now what we're going to do is come on up and stack your knees as much in alignment on top of each other as you possibly can. Some people won't have that ability. Just cross one leg over the top of the other. Try and get as much as you can. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to turn towards our top leg side. 8, 7, 6, 5, 2, 1. Switch the legs. Other leg comes on top. Line the knees up and rotate. 8, 7, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So now, going back down to the ground, we're going to be face up. Feet are going to be straight out in front of us, and we're going to turn and we're going to rotate, and we're going to lay our bodies completely flat if you can, or get as low as you can across your yoga mat. And your back leg stays in back, and we really sink into this, laying all the way across your body, and 2 minutes here. So I've got this nice rotation. I'm facing with my left foot out in front. My right leg is back behind me. I've got a twist happening through my back. As I reach my right arm up over my head, and I'm reaching back behind me, I'm getting a nice stretch through my oblique here, down my front and down my side, my lower back. The stretch that you feel like that's in your oblique area is actually the beginning stretch of a psoas. Your psoas runs really deep, attaches into your lower back, and then attaches in at your hip. So we're really trying to elongate through here so we can get some more stretching in through our hip, but also allowing that lower back to get stretched out. Breathe. Keep your feet on the ground. Don't let them hover up in the air. And reach with your hands up above your head, rotating through. Two and one. Just roll onto your back. Bring your knees up to your chest. You can hug those knees in, and then bring your knees over your hips and just lean them out. One side, cross to the other side. Just keep toggling it out, allowing that little bit of rebound to happen. Then straighten your legs out and sit up. We're going to go to our other side. Same thing here. Feet straight out in front of you and rotate, turn, reach, coming all the way back behind you and hold.
Remember that every side of your body is different. You might not be able to lay completely flat on this side. You might not have the same reach up overhead. Just be okay with where you are and breathe. And 2, 1, rolling onto your back. Bring your knees into your chest. A little hug. And then knees over your hips. Rocking them out side to side. And then come on up. Okay. So since our hip joint is such a complicated piece of equipment, we stretch our hip joint deep, getting the outer hip, but now we're going to go for our hip flexor. So this big front piece that kind of typically gives people a really hard time. So we stretch through our our QL, so our back, and that elongation through our psoas to hopefully warm up our hip flexor to be able to take a nice stretch. I'm on my right knee, my left foot is straight out in front of me. I'm going to put that foot a little further out in front of me, and my attention is going to be focused on my right hip. I want to think about my right hip as the primary mover to lean and push me forward. So I've taken my right hip from being back here, I'm rotating, and now I'm thinking about nothing but my right hip pushing myself forward, beginning to lean my body weight and transferring all my weight onto my left leg. At the same time, there's a nice deep stretch that's coming across the top of my right quad here. And then I'm going to raise my right arm up into the air if you want to get a little extra elongation through here. So here we go. 2-minute hold right here. You can keep that arm up for as long as you want. If you need to bring it down, bring it down. But try and think about stretching all along that side if you bring that arm down. And again, the primary focus is on that right hip, really pushing that right hip forward. My right feet are flat on the ground behind me. Just sort of the top of my foot is flat, just letting that foot sink into this. The hip flexor is a common tight position on us because we sit and it's in a contracted state. So it's always wanting to work. And if we keep it working, it begins to take over for us and a lot of other things. Core work is definitely one of the things that it'll take over for us pretty quickly. So we feel that burning in our hip flexors. It's our hip flexor taking over instead of our core because it's already in a contracted state. So if we can increase the mobility in here and not allow the hip flexor to take over for everything, our core will start taking over for the core work it's supposed to. Almost there, almost there. 2, and 1. Just come on back. You can put both knees down. Just have a seat here. Just let this right hip just kind of be for a moment. You can always stand up if that feels like something that would feel better, or straighten the leg out. Whatever really is going to work for you, kind of allow that right hip flexor to feel the effects of giving that great range of mobility towards your front of your foot. So we'll set ourselves up and we'll switch to our left side. So our left knee is bent on the mat, our right foot is out in front of us. Same idea here. Think primarily about the left hip, as that's the initiator of the movement. Square it up and then push that left hip forward. Lean forward, bringing all your weight onto your right leg, and raise that hand up. And we've got 2 minutes here. I sometimes have to reposition my left foot a little further away from me. We want to try and relax out through every other part of the body here. So I don't want to stay tight in my quad. I don't want to stay tight in my left glute. I want to push forward, but then try and relax, which I know is sort of difficult to do. Breathe. Almost there. 2 and 1. Push back. Have a seat or kneel. Whatever works for you. Try and let that relax out across the top of the left hip flexor. So now we're going to go into some chest work and shoulder work. So we're going to take your right arm and just bring it back behind you onto the ground, and then turn and rotate. So I'm thinking about keeping my left hand in one spot, and my right hand in one spot, and I'm rotating my left shoulders forward and back, trying to open up through the front of my chest here. I'm going to rotate for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then take that arm back behind me. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now forward arm circles. 8, 2, 1. And now back arm circles. 8,
I'm going to take my right arm that I've been kind of warming up here, and I'm going to put it out to my right side. And then I am going to roll onto that right shoulder. So right hand face down on the ground, right out to my right side. And then I am going to roll my body so that it's like a side plank onto this right shoulder. And then here we're going to hold. So we've got a 2-minute hold here. What I want you to do is peer out at your right hand and make sure that your right hand didn't walk its way down towards your hip. It has a tendency of doing that to make it easier. And you roll as much as you can or you want on this right shoulder. We're just thinking about creating more mobility in this shoulder, so we're trying to open up through this joint. Noticing that my left leg is sort of hovering in the air. You can do whatever you want with your legs. You can put them on the ground. I like having the extra hover here. Just kind of helps me feel a little more balanced. Two and one. Just roll off that arm. Bring that arm in. Work your way back into a seated position, whatever feels comfortable for you. And however you want to move that arm about. Feels good to swing it back and forth, side to side. Really, we're just kind of allowing that movement to come back into it. I sometimes, with my arm being out like that, I feel that a lot in my elbow, and so that tells me that I've got some tension built up in my bicep and in my tricep. So again, another spot to think about tomorrow for trigger point therapy. All right, I'm gonna dig into some things into my triceps and my biceps. There's something tight in there that's not allowing that extension out. Same idea on our left side. We're gonna put that hand down on the ground behind us, and then we're just thinking about rotating our right shoulder back behind us. So 2, 1, and rotate open. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come up to shoulder height, kicking it back behind you. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Circles forward. 8, 7. I put my hand on my shoulder to feel any spots of tension or popping that's kind of happening along the way. Kind of just lets me know, and reverse, different things that are happening in my shoulder. So I've kind of become a little more aware of like, oh, okay, that tendon is popping across that. Where's that coming from? Two and one. Okay, we're doing the same thing on our left side. So the hand goes out, straight out towards your left side.
Reach that hand, try and keep it in line with your shoulder, and 2, 1, roll up onto that left shoulder. Again, peer out at the left hand occasionally. Make sure that that hand doesn't start migrating down towards your waist. Keep focusing on that breath. Almost there. And 2, 1, roll flat onto the ground and come on up. Whatever you got to do to that arm to sort of make it feel good. Feel the effects of really getting that extra mobility, of opening it up back behind you. Kind of open up here. The next one that we're going to do is we're going to work through our back of our shoulders. So we're going to give ourselves a hug and just pay attention to which arm goes on top. So my left arm is going on top of my right arm, and I'm just going to hold this hug position here, and I'm going to lower myself onto the ground, and then my hands are going to go out to my sides, and I'm going to use my body weight to try and relax. My back is going to arch out, so I'm allowing some more greater mobility in the opposite direction. So we tried to open up our shoulders this way. Now we're going to try and open them in the opposite direction. Okay, so give yourself a hug. Doesn't matter which one you put on top, because we're going to do the other side. Hug yourself and then come down to a face down position and really lay down, and in 2, 1, sink all the way into this. And you put as much weight into this as you can. Your arms are above your boobs, and your hands are out at your sides. Relax those hands out to the sides. And then I just let my chin sort of rest on my bicep of my top arm. Keeping your palms down towards the ground. And then using your breath, you can assist this by filling your lungs. And as you fill your lungs, you can feel that greater stretch coming across your back, allowing more mobility in through the shoulders. 2, and 1. I just work my elbows back in. You can lay flat on your belly. You can come up, whatever works for you. I like coming up to just kind of let the blood flow go back in and really feel that deep stretch that came across my shoulder and really allowed that greater range of mobility inward. So I'm going to switch my arm, whichever arm was on top is now going to be on the bottom. So I'm switching it, going to my new position of hug, working my way down towards the ground, and 2, 1, laying into this. Hands on the ground. Big deep breaths, allowing that deeper range through our back. And 2, 1, walking those elbows in, and then coming on up. Just taking a second, feeling everything through my shoulders, top of my shoulders, my back. Again, taking those mental notes of places that became hot spots or were tight as I did these movements to come back in tomorrow to do some deeper trigger point work. We've got one more that we're going to do, and it's going to our wrists. It's going to be our wrists. So we're going to start with circles. We're just going to do circle in. So just kind of working those wrists in a circle in pattern. Feeling everything that you can. Popping in the wrist, reverse it, circle it out. And then up and down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our palms up towards our face, and we're going to put as much pressure as you can into the back of your hands, and we're going to hold here for 2 minutes. Here we go. So palms up towards your face, and just really thinking about equal pressure in those wrists. So sometimes you have to come up a little bit more, making sure that you're not just putting pressure into the pinky. A lot of us spend so much time at a desk, keyboard. This is a great one to give you flexion on the other side, greater mobility in the other direction.
For those of you that have a lot of problems with push-ups where you really feel this in your wrist, this is a great one to do to increase that mobility going in this direction. Not normally how we hold ourselves. You can wiggle your fingers, keeping the back of your hand as much onto the ground as possible, but wiggle the thumbs, the fingers, see how that feels, see how that changes it. We have so many tendons and ligaments and muscles in our hands that this sort of action gives them a little greater range. Last few seconds on this. 2 and 1. Just come on up. Small circles, whatever you want to do to feel this through your wrist. Move the hands back and forth. And that was your total body mobility work for today, you guys. So keep in mind, even write it down if you need to, the places that you had hot spots, and then join tomorrow for some trigger point work where we'll take a tennis ball or a golf ball or whatever kind of apparatus you have to really dig into those knots and start to release those, because those will give us some greater mobility on our next mobility go round. Have a great day, guys. Bye.